What was he like? Well, he was very genuine. He was very real. He was very open, and he was known for that. Like he was kind of an open book, but he was open. So because he was open, you felt that you could then be open with him.
And he was always incredibly open and friendly, and everybody loved Andy.
He was the real deal. He was totally without pretense.
And what I admired about Andy was what I admired about so many New Brunswickers is an openness, an honesty, a lack of facade, if you call it that.
He's a legend, in the area for having accomplished a few really unique and creative things politically.
Well, Andy was unique. I've never in my life met anybody quite like him.
But for me, he was a champion. He was somebody who very much understood the importance of progressing as a province, as a nation.
I don't think I would have had the career I did without Andy Scott. In all honesty, he was one of the people until the day he died that I called a mentor.
But he was beloved. I have to use that word. He really was loved and beloved by the people who elected him and beyond.
I never had encountered a politician who took such delight in engaging people, even if they were critical of him. And in fact, it almost seemed to inspire him more.
He was willing to have a meeting and talk about the roughest, toughest, pointiest issues that a community could wrestle with. And he wouldn't shy away.
Always wanted to learn more, really keen to learn, and to change his thinking on things. He was always very open to having his mind changed.
The work of Andy Scott, both historically, but then importantly, going forward around education and how we become a more open and accepting, accessible province, and certainly education system for our children.
And Andy was always incredibly accessible and incredibly committed to New Brunswick.
Andy loved New Brunswick, and he wanted it to be the best that it could be. And I think that's one of his greatest legacies, is that no matter what he was doing it to make New Brunswick a better place.
He really cared about people. He really cared about the staff in government. It wasn't just, he wasn't trying to develop something like NB Sprin for that to be another check on his little list or something. He was really passionate about this project.
He was so endlessly committed to the idea that government could change people's lives and that it could figure out how to do it if you talk to people.
The passion that he brought to NB Sprin to try to make it a reality. And
we not only miss the man, I think politics could use more Andy Scott.
By saying I can't really tell the NBIRDT story without talking about Andy Scott and the launch of NB Sprin.
And he was also great for creating opportunities for conversations. And if he knew a connection that he could share that you and whoever weren't aware of, he'd bring it up.
He had this unique ability to bring together different communities that ordinarily wouldn't have much to do with each other. And Andy had that ability to bring people together, to not just engage, but to commit.
He also didn't ask much. So when he did, you delivered. And I think that was probably why Andy was able to get the support, across party lines throughout in his work. Why he was able to make something like NB Sprin happen is because he was always there for people and he didn't ask much. But when he did ask, you just felt compelled to give because he had given so much.
So when Andy came along, when he left government and he started with UMB as the Andrews Research Fellow, he was very much convinced of the importance of bringing evidence to inform policy. He talked about, the Tim Hortons discussions where serious policy decisions were made that involved many, many millions of dollars and many, many thousands of people. And there are big decisions being made on the basis of gut feeling or who you know or what the connection was or the need to be doing something right away.
He had the interests and the plight of Indigenous peoples well before people could even spell Indigenous.
That he was open to seeing us progress the social agenda of New Brunswick, and so he didn't play political games with it because it was that important to him to see that take place. And I think I value that type of leadership in what he stood for that way.
It's like he really, the things we talk about now, equity, diversity, inclusion, he didn't have those words for it, but he was doing that a long time ago. He was totally ahead of his time. As a governing person and as a community person, he was totally ahead of his time.
A lot of ways, MV Sprin and Andy and others were ahead of the curve in this regard, because now you see increasingly funding organizations like Social Science and Humanities Research Council and Canadian Institutes of Health Research saying, show us the impact. What's your knowledge translation strategy? And the days of saying, well, I'm going to go to some nice academic conferences in nice places and publish in some great academic journals, it doesn't cut anymore. Because the funders, want to see, how are you going to make a difference? How is this money going to make a difference?
And I admire him especially just for his passion for New Brunswick and putting everything that he had into making it such a great province.
Unique individual, and what a gift for us all to have known him and been able to work with him.
I think the words public servant are tossed around quite liberally. He truly was a public servant. He believed in that role. He believed in serving the public.
Started with Andy connecting with people in the Executive Council office, one person in particular, Pat McKenzie of the province of New Brunswick, and said, government really needs to do this. We really need the evidence. And in order to get the evidence, we need the data, and we need to set something up that will allow us to get the data into the hands of people we can work with to help us do policy better.
Yeah, he was very giving. He had a very, very giving nature, a very giving spirit. And it set a tone in every room because he gave of himself too, right? I mean, Andy would talk. He had time for everyone always. And people really value that, right? When you give of yourself, people appreciate and value that. And that's what he was like.
He was a good friend and a really delightful man. We had a good time, and hopefully the sunset can leave a permanent mark on the horizon.